For.
The best.
Okay.
So we're going live.
All right.
What are your thoughts on zebra stripes, though?
Do you have Restream chat so we can actually see people coming up?
You're not gonna get a lot today because everyone's at tournaments today.
No, but if somebody
Did
does.
anyone in you guys are live. Or you could put it on Reddit. It says you are live.
And we are good to go and talking about things and stuff today. I am here with, I don't even know who these people are. I got kidnapped.
Hi, they pulled me off the street. Hi.
Mr. T.J. Lanigan and Mr. Thomas Ogden with me today. With me, the tallest, youngest, and best looking man in 40K.
He's got badges to prove it.
I do. This is true.
Oh.
We're going to talk a little bit about, first off, terrain placement. And I see so many games lost. I can't say you can't deploy to win, but you can deploy to not lose. And that's a big, big deal. I see so many games lost before any dice are put down. You have to have a plan before you put anything down. I'm going to give my number one tip on this. We're going to deploy all of our terrain before I deploy any of the terrain. And that's a huge deal. They can only really stop you from pushing out one, because they can do 4 or 6 inches out from that center line. So whoever has that first drop can effectively push you back a little, but they can't do anything to stop these pieces in your background. And I see this is where it's lost so much, because I think, well, I've just won that roll. I'm super excited. I'm going to put out that first piece of terrain against TJ. It's going to be awesome. I think this is the best I can possibly do. And then I realize, oh man, my next piece has to be 6 inches away from that, and it can't be placed directly on that center piece. And all of a sudden, I'm deploying back here, and I don't want to be back here because I'm playing a very aggressive army, and my whole game plan was to stage up and move in. This is the kind of things that I see happen just time and time again. You have to plan out everything that you're going to do before you place anything. That's why I say measure everything out. Pre-measure, pre-measure, pre-measure. That includes your opponent's models. For instance, I'm playing, I don't know, an army that everybody knows and loves, Tau. Super exciting. Everybody's happy about playing Tau.
Every time. It's my favorite game.
So the thing is that if I'm playing Tau, and we'll just say, we're going to say we're on board corner. We'll start with board corners today. So I've got 22 up. I've got 9 inches off the edge. So let's, before we place a piece of terrain, let's find out where we can actually deploy. Because I want to deploy, and I want to have a place to go second. My first turn, sorry. Whether I'm going first or second is not going to matter, because we have to set it up. And it's important to start measuring where your opponent can go. So, TJ, you're going to deploy right here. First off, Tom's terrible Tau is coming at you. We know that they can move up to 18, the Cold Star Commander. So we won't talk about the deep strikes first. That's a different thing.
Well, you can do, suits are 16, right? So you know that they're the max. He's not going to just throw a commander out 18 inches. So 16 is where he's going to be. So now you need to figure out where your 16,
So we have to
what
look
that looks
and
like.
Look at the angles. One of the bigger things before we go anywhere, stop saying L's. Everything's a V.
Yeah, you need to turn it the proper way.
Because this, I gotta figure. I accidentally put it out immediately as a V, but I just see people putting things flat all the time.
Yeah, like this. Oh, I'm going to put it in this spot here. That's an L. But you could just do that. And not only does it block from here, but it blocks from here as well.
The thing is that you have to start measuring those angles. So if I get first drop, I'm like, I'd really like to have this piece. And then I start working on what are the angles that I need to work at. So if my opponent comes out and I know that their deployment zone goes 22 inches up here to the middle, and they have to be 9 inches away from it, and they can go 16. So I know that they can be here. So I need to start adjusting this piece of terrain so that that first turn, I'm blocked. So I know that I can be, oh, that's really loud when it gets the door open.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, it's a hallway, right? So
I need to be in here. So, but I want to measure all of these out, because I don't want just this one. I see people put out a decent middle, and what happens is you don't put anything else good out. We're going to say we're going to start off with saying we're in hammer and anvil. for our deployment.
And we're trying to fix on it, because I guess they can barely hear you.
Okay.
Can you post to Reddit?
I have so much to say. Makes me sad. So, I don't want to start over.
Play fight with 2 planes.
Pew pew, smash smash. But one of the big things is that you don't just deploy for your deployment zone. And TJ and I, we just talked about this over the last weekend. Whenever we were at a team tournament together, we were talking about this.
Last weekend. Yeah.
So one of the biggest things we see people make all the time is you don't have a plan for where you're going. You have a plan to hide. Like for instance, I see pretty decent terrain placement right here and here. And then
Mine says on. Mine's definitely on. I got the power. Got the touch.
Alright, talk now, Red.
so I'm going to talk again because apparently I was not on.
Does that work now? I'm assuming they could already hear me. Yeah, okay.
Well, they
Cool.
heard me through you.
Nice.
So
That's the best way to hear Brad.
yeah,
honestly.
true.
Secondhand sources are best.
Secondhand source is the best. It's like playing telephone. We wanted to hear what we were doing.
All right.
So-
So yeah, terrain placement.
So, should we completely start from the beginning? Let's just start from the
Yeah,
beginning.
let's start from the beginning. It's fine.
Well, I think I heard you, it just was low.
All
Okay.
right. All right. That's
So
fine.
one of the big things we were talking about is one of the biggest, besides not measuring everything before you put anything out. And if you get nothing else from today, pre-measure everything before you put anything is what you really want to put out. Now, the other thing that you have to do is not just hide in your deployment zone. It's where am I going the next turn? What is my plan? Before you put out
Oh, you-
any-
game plan, secondaries, like these all
100%.
chain together. If you put your terrain in such a way where you go, I should probably take banners. Well, then your terrain should reflect some way to get banners safely without being killed every turn.
100%. And the thing is that these pieces of terrain, such as this, if I'm trying to get that, this is my plan is that I'm going to go to my opponent's neutral zone, neutral objective here. We're playing board corners. I want to go from here to here and here to here, and I want to get to here. The other thing is if I chose banners, how am I getting to this objective? So
Yeah,
I
you're gonna have a unit that starts in that middle section. If that you don't have anything that blocks that middle section, it's gonna be very difficult for you to get from your home base to not your home base, your other banner spots.
And
So-
depending on whether we're playing, if we're doing which way we're going. So it's either going to be one half of the board long ways or one half of the board short ways. So you have to determine where you're putting and where your plan is from there.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal to plan your terrain around what you're going to do, not just, I see this constantly. Well, the first thing I see constantly is one big piece pushes everything out of whack. The second thing I see is people go, oh, I've got a good hiding place in my deployment zone. And then you look at the board and go, but where am I going now? How am I getting to that secondary objective? How am I getting to my points? How am I scoring my banners? How am I taking that new secondary shock tactics? I don't know if you heard about, but it now scores
extra point, bro.
I heard
extra
it's 20 points a game. So
So you got that going on, right? So that's hiding is great, but in certain instances, not hiding is what you actually need to do. So that's the other important part, right? So
what is your army versus your opponent's armies? This right here sounds fantastic if I'm playing an aggressive army that needs to push up. I'm playing my Harlequins. I want to try to get some 12-man squads into this middle. That sounds fantastic.
Yep.
However, all of a sudden, you're playing against Blood Angels. You're playing against a very aggressive Kraken Tyranid list. Well, this is not what you want, because you want to set up some firing lanes and you want to make sure that they're not just camping on things, trying to take
also,
a
if you don't
12
get
from
first turn, right? Someone's playing a Kraken army, they get first turn, their entire army gets to push to this building right here, and your army's now going, I can't really charge them this turn, so I'm kind of stuck behind a wall
it's
waiting.
such a big deal. And on that, I want to put something small. I want to put a barricade. Barricades are one of the most underrated pieces of terrain and I'd like one right now. Nope, that's not a. That
I
is
know, it's not a
ruined wall.
barricade.
But I'd like one. My handy, beautiful assistant Tom Ogden is not getting anything for me. But one of the things that you want to look at, barricades. I need crates or something.
Crates are in the next room.
So what I
That room straight
what I
across.
want on this is if I want to open it up, I don't just need a forest or a -1. I also want to look for how can I defend against those armies. And it's a big deal, and I'm going to let TJ do this in a moment because I have little T-Rex arms. Ah! And I can't reach across the board very well. But one of the
Thanks.
biggest things is if I'm trying to defend, I'm doing that. Because this makes it so my opponent can't put a piece of terrain on this.
Yep, you're
On-
doing that. You can do this. This isn't bad either. Especially if your opponent puts a nice big building right in front on their side. They get first drop and they're like, haha, I had this crazy, I get to charge out of here and do all this nonsense. This will be great. And you go, okay, cool. You're going to do that. I'm going to do that.
Yep.
I'm going to do the exact opposite.
You
make
have,
that
and
difficult
you have to
for
look
you.
at your game plan before you place any terrain. I cannot stress this enough because it's one of the biggest things that happens all the time. Is you have to have a game plan for how you're winning the game, which includes your secondaries, your primaries, and what am I doing? If I'm playing a very passive game, I'm not going to set aggressive bounce up and go to my opponent. I'm going to set up lines of fire. I'm going to set up defensively.
Well, it's, a common misconception is the same with deployment, right? People are like, it's I go, you go, right? But that's not how it actually is,
No.
right? Same thing with deployment, same thing with putting terrain down. It's not I go, you go. It's I have an idea of how my side of the table is going to look. I have a plan on how my game's going to play. I have a plan on what you're going to do to me. Some idea of how you're going to play into me. I need to now make my actual deployment and my terrain match my vision for how the game is going to go, because that is the path to victory. Just going I go, you put a terrain there, I then put a terrain here, then he puts terrain there, then I put a terrain. That's not how this is
And
working.
it doesn't. And the thing is that people look at me all the time when I'm placing my terrain down, and I start measuring all of it. Again, measure all your terrain first, because I'm going to see whether I get first or second drop. I'm going to measure where all my stuff can go before I place any of it down. And it's such a big deal to do that because you need to make sure that your unit can make it there. How far do my units move? Do I have 12-inch jumps? Do I have 8-inch? What am I doing on this? Whose tape measure did I break? And
Mine. I got it.
and
It's not broken. You just gotta.
you got to do special things.
You gotta do the
like Matt's
special-
dice.
You gotta do the special thing here. You can take this one for now.
But
While I
it's a
fix
big
this
deal
one.
when you're looking at that. If I want to go to that front, can I make it to cover? Can I make it with a minimum advance of 1? Can I make it to where I want to go? If I'm going to put this piece right here, because my deployment zone goes to here, and maybe I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to deploy right here, and then I got to find out if I can make it to my next piece, which is where I want to go and I was hide. And one of the biggest things, so I said barricades that people just don't use enough, and I'm going to use it over here, but I want it over there. These are one of the most defensible pieces in the game. It's crazy that that's just not used more often. So I can hide behind this, especially if I put it, and we're talking about that a lot of times in the corners, and we'll say that these are both 2 on each side. So your opponent has to go either up, over, and down, which is no, or they have to go all the way around. That's why barricades are such a ridiculously defensive style. And you can block out the objective on this when you're looking at it. You can set this up a lot of times where your opponent can't get to the objective unless they can come all the
Right.
way around. So you want a unit, and a lot of times you're going to look at that unit, and again, pre-measure, pre-measure, pre-measure. There's such a big difference between this and this, because I no longer can get that angle from either side unless I come all the way over here. I see consistently people go, okay, I'm going to put up these barricades. And they do this. And the opponent goes, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go over here and I can clearly see you, which is again,
I mean, this is the best terrain. This one is the best terrain just from the sheer fact that it is make terrain, right? You make it exactly how you need
you
it.
need it.
If I have a building here, I already put it here. I don't need this side blocked off because there's a building here that blocks it. So now I can put that on the other side.
And that's a
I
big thing on that is also when you're setting your terrain, layer your terrain to make it. Because a lot of times you can have a piece of terrain and it looks like you're out in the open, but you're actually not. Because I have this here, for instance,
Right.
and I'm going to layer this. So this actually covers an inch or two of here. So that you can't get lines down these long. So I can have my slightly bigger units, which may be harder to hide, my big transports, my tanks in this nature, where my opponent won't be able to get that line because this blocks straight through here. And a lot of times I'm going to do the same thing onto this. So this overlaps this piece, and this overlaps this piece. And even though this unit is standing kind of in the open, between these pieces, you can't see in my backfield.
Yeah.
And it's such a big deal in that I see people constantly getting hit while their hammerhead gets shot, their bigger tanks and things of nature, your raiders, your whatever has a big butt and people are destroying things. It's all
I don't
good.
even move.
But the biggest thing is that, again, pre-measure, and measure angles. That is one of the biggest things, is see where people have to go to get to your unit that you want to put on here. Another thing to do, don't be afraid to take a second. If you're running a clock, put it on your clock. Put your unit on the board and then see how much space they take up. I'm playing TJ right now, and I go, oh man, this unit actually kind of goes all the way out to here. Well, I'm going to need to turn this piece of terrain until he just can't see it. And I don't know, maybe he's got something like, I don't know, 1,000 suns, we'll say, and he can teleport. Well, if he can teleport, I'm going to make sure that there's somebody 9 inches away so I can keep him there. Where is that angle at 9 inches? That's what I need to pre-measure out.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. And then, like I said, alternatively, the other way, which is I'm not playing a melee army. I'm playing something that's not allergic to melee. You've got your Tau armies.
You got your Tau armies.
You've got your Tau guys. You've got Thousand Suns. We really don't like melee. We're not fans of melee. So in particular, instances like that, you want to make sure that this terrain is not a detriment to you. You're like, oh, I have to put all this terrain out, but maybe instead of doing what I normally do, you're going to turn buildings around, and I'm going to open up this middle of the table. Even if my opponent gets first drop and they put that big building in the middle, that's fine, because I'm going to make it so that all of this is a killing field. There is nowhere you can get out of that building without seeing me.
And no matter if your opponent even gets the first drop, you can still create distances.
Yeah.
You can set yourself up. You can make it so that these objectives here, you're going to set, that is where you're going to take your objective from. All the way behind, you're setting up that long killing field. Because even if, let's put that, you got first drop and you have a melee army. He put that first one, they're like super confident, hey, I'm going to get all over it. Well, I'm going to start doing things like this. I'm going to set up long killing fields. I'm going to set up places that I can hide and then shoot and come back to. I'm going to make it more difficult. I might put my barricades over here in that corner again. And I'm going to make it so that if you want to make this charge to this, you have to go all the way around. Because the thing is that you, even if you have fly, you don't ignore this in the charge phase. So you have to either go up and over or all the way around. So you can make it very unfriendly, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, totally. You can do stuff like this where you're like, I need to put this down. There's nowhere else to put this. I'm going to put it like that. That does nothing for my opponent. If they're running at me this way, if his deployment's here, my deployment's there, this does nothing. They can put maybe a guy behind there. Like a single character might be able to fit behind that wall. But I've effectively negated that terrain. Then if I put this here, I've negated this terrain for him. He now has to go this side and this side, effectively making the advantage of him getting his first drop and going, I have easier charges now, a lot more difficult. Because now they're like, yeah, you're right, I do have easier charges if I'm going this way or that way, but I certainly don't have an easier charge if I'm going this way. So then I put, this terrain down, and then I have one of my buildings, I flip it around the other way so that the back of the ruin is like this, so that I can see. There's nothing that I can't see. So now I put this here where I can stand there, get cover, but still be able to be inside, still be able to shoot out. Then I do the same thing for the other building, and then I put it like this. I put all three of my buildings basically like this. The big one goes like this, and I basically have all three of my buildings something like that. Now, my opponent has no way to, it'd probably go like this, but you have no way to really.
It's definitely like this.
It's definitely like that, but that's fine. So it has no way of really doing much to me. I can just stand. I can stand here, here, and there, and he's over there, and that's great. That's completely fine. But to get from there to here is going to be very difficult for somebody who is all melee. And that's what I want. I want to be able to see you. I want to be able to shoot you, psychic you, do all the stuff. Same thing with Tau. I mean, you know, in certain matchups, Tau does not want to have you coming screaming at them. You know, Crazin's Bile, you're moving 10 inches plus a d6. On turn 1, if everybody starts here, they can go here. Well, now knowing that, I know that I need to make sure that there's nothing here. My whole army sits back here until they move to here, and then we can just hang out.
Even if you have a army that has a lot of melee elements, if your opponent has a skewed army, he's playing all hand-to-hand, or he's playing all shooting, you have to start figuring out, well, what's my game plan? Because I see people all the time get excited for the putting down that first piece of
Yep.
terrain.
They're like, I won the roll. This is going to be great. I basically, I detriment my opponents so much now. They are completely, you know, beholden to where I'm going to put this terrain. I'm just going to completely change the game. And then they put down the one piece and your opponent's like, all right, cool. So anyway, I do this,
Yeah.
this. And they're like, oh, that really wasn't as big as I thought it was.
Yeah, and you can mitigate these factors quite a bit. And the thing is that you have to know what your game plan is also. What am I taking? What am I taking my secondaries? How am I playing the primary game? Am I going to the middle? So a lot of times you're not going to be pushing to the middle. I'm playing Bile. I'm playing Kraken Tyranids. I don't need to go to that middle objective, especially if my opponent's playing 10 Terminators with 3 characters that are just decided they want to camp out here. Well, even if I'm playing a more melee-centric army, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to put a barricade here, and I'm going to concentrate on this, and then taking this from my opponent.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you don't have to go to the middle.
I mean, oftentimes when I play my army, I never go to the middle. Unless my opponent has lost most of his threats, maybe I'll go to the middle on turn 5 or turn 4. But for the most part, I'm here and here. I know I'm going to be there and there. My terrain and game plan is all centered around me holding 2 points or even holding 1. There are certain games where I hold 1 point for most of the game. I'll spend 3 turns on that home objective, and I'm like, my secondaries have to reflect that. The terrain placement has to reflect that. And I need to have a game plan for how turn 4 and turn 5 are going to end up scoring me 40 to 50 points, which is going to swing that game back into my favor. So,
and the thing is you have to put your terrain out to reflect that, of course.
Yeah.
And the thing is that how am I playing this game? Ask yourself that before we put anything out. What am I playing against? How am I playing? What are my secondaries? Do I need to set up and hide so I can put some banners up? Do I need to take 3? I'm taking Tau Stranglehold. I'm taking Knights. You know what I mean? What do I need to hide in the middle? Because if I don't need to hide in the middle, if I don't want to stage in the middle, especially if I'm playing against an aggressive army, if you're playing bugs against me, I don't want to give you a great spot to hide. Like, this feels great. I've got this great spot. I'm going to hide my army. I'm going to jump up, and I'm going to move to here. Well, unfortunately, if your opponent has a bunch of melee, they're going to just hide their army right behind
well,
here.
whoever gets first turn, right? If I get first turn against you with that, on that setup, I'm playing Creations, you're playing Kraken. I get first turn, I go right here. I set up my Terminators behind that wall. Yeah, you can charge me with your Raveners if you really want to, but they'll be Trans Hitman, -1 to wound, Terminators, and then behind that is the rest of my army.
Right. And now you've given your opponent a place to stage to kill you as opposed to that. So you have to figure out, what is my plan before you put anything out? You have to know what your secondaries are and what your game plan is before you put a piece of anything out. Now, the biggest thing on that is, and I do this in my play style, but it goes to terrain placement also, which is, before I move any model in the game, I ask 3 questions. How am I scoring? How am I denying? And how am I setting up for the next turn? And your terrain is the exact same way of, how am I going to score this game? What secondaries did I pick? What do I need? Where do I need to be? And do I need to be in cover to take those? If you're in the open, well, it's 9th edition 40K. We're at the end of the edition. You're going to get killed.
Yeah, things are going to die, you
Yeah.
know? And, you know, other stuff, too, is something else that we haven't talked about is, like, what is my opponent going to do? What's my opponent going to take for secondaries? If my opponent is playing their army with no Psychers, and they're playing against a heavy Psyker army like Eldar, chances are they're probably going to take a Boar. I mean, And they're probably going to take Assassinate to kind of double down on that. So taking both of those things, I know my opponent's going to try to be pushing into me. So knowing that, I can play more defensively because I know that their secondaries require them to push into me. So now the onus is on them to come after me and do stuff, which is important to note. Hey, I know my opponent's game plan. I know what it's going to look like. I'm playing against Chaos Knights.
Just say you're playing against like a Tyranids or something, where they're going to take a psychic secondary.
Yeah.
They're going to push the middle most of the time.
Right. So who's gonna go in the middle? Well, now with losing your abilities, if your Warlord dies, most people aren't going to throw their Tyrant in the middle of the table. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to throw a Neurothrope in the middle. Well, the only way to throw one of those characters into the middle and have it live is something like this. Something like this. Where they'll be able to hide a unit next to it, and then the character stands next to it.
Take that, even if you are a melee army, take that away. I would rather have a piece of staging here, so that I can attack this objective, and I have shooting in the middle. So you have to look at what the probability of what your opponent's going to do. I would love to stage here. Let's just move these around just a little bit. I would love to stage here into here. Go 4 away. Actually, it might be 6 for this one, depending on where I'm playing. But I'm going to put this at 30 so I can stage here. I can still shoot into the middle here. I'm leaving this open. And then I'm also probably going to put a similar piece on this side over here if we're playing Hammer and Anvil.
Well, it gives you the flexibility, right? Like
Correct.
If my opponent plays heavy on this side, or they play light on, they play heavy on this side, I can now stage my units on turn 2 and turn 3 to come in and kind of flip this into the alternative deployment, which is, you try to sweep that flank for them and change the, the dynamic of the game.
And you got to give options on that because they can only block. And the thing is that if I get the first drop and I know my opponent's going to go in the middle, that's what's happening. I'm putting something small because what I want is options. If I have a hybrid army, which is a lot of armies which have some shooting and some hand-to-hand, I'm going to set it up so I have options to do stuff. I'm not going to let TJ just sit and just do Warp Ritual and take the middle, maybe double down if they're playing Chaos, where they're taking another middle objective. I'm not just going to let you do that for free.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing against even someone like Kraken Nids and I'm playing Thousand Sons, normally we're not a melee-centric army. If you put that piece of terrain in the middle of the table, I now know I can drop 20 Terminators behind that building on turn 1.
Because their whole plan is to take that middle now. So now you have options to where you want to go.
And they probably pick secondaries that are based off that. They are probably going to try to play aggressive. But now you're telling them, listen, I'm here. I'm now right here. And your army starts back there. So even if you move and run to here, these charges are going to be very far charges. Now, you can try to get lucky and try to make those 10, 11-inch charges. But if you don't make it, you're just sitting out
in
there.
the open.
Now, I walk 10 Terminators or 20 Terminators from outside of that building, shoot everything. And I'm like, all right, cool. Anyway, so that was bad.
Well, it's especially also when you're looking at some of the slower. I mean, you talk about playing against Bile, even though they have the advance and things like the Emperor's Children. I would like to have something like this on both sides because I have the option, but I can set up where those charges are still very far. Exact same thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I also can hit back here because why hit the 10 Terminators with Abaddon, a Mop, and a Dark Apostle all sitting in the middle when I could punch 10 cultists in the face?
Yeah.
And I want to set that up so that I can go punch 10 cultists in the face.
Yeah, I mean, and alternatively, if you were to set that piece of terrain up in the middle, and normally I'm not a melee army, but let's say I am playing, on some elements of melee. Well, if I do this on your turn as well, I set my entire army up to be right here. Now you're like, oh, shit. I set up there, but I was not expecting him to now deploy in such an aggressive style. So now he's standing behind me from there, which is about, he's standing right here. I can't see him. He can push to here, but he can't charge behind this wall. Now I will be saying to him at any point in time, like, faster units, things like that, I'm going to be able to move to here and then charge you on your turn. So, like, armies that armies that have double move, like, Kraken has the extra movement, Thousand Sons have the, their double move as well with Temporal Surge. You have armies like Eldar with like Quicken and things like that. These are all elements that you have to be aware of if their army does it and your army does not. If you set something up like that, you have to expect that things are probably not going to go well for you. Also, that's your front piece now, which means your back pieces can only be this and that to hold these objectives. So now I know where this is going to go. I know where that's going to go for the most part.
And I would rather have stage pieces, to be honest, than anything, because I want to be able to go places.
Yeah, this doesn't really do a lot for me. The big buildings, I'm not a huge fan of them. I especially wouldn't put them all the way out there, because not only does it help you, but oftentimes it'll help your opponent a lot more than it's going to help you.
100%. It gives them an option to go places. You know what I mean? And the thing is that where you should look for where you're, not just where you're starting, where you're going, which is why places like this, and especially we're doing a hammer and anvil deployment right now. A lot of times, if the two of the missions are, this is your half. So
Yep.
instead of this way, but we're still playing in our quarter or our diagonal as our deployment, I love doing this because I can deploy all the way up to 30. I can then effectively go from here to here, and I'm going to set a piece here.
Yep. And then if you just did this, now there's no firing, almost no firing over here. He would have to be in this exact little corner.
He did like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So now there's no way that he could see anything through here. So now Brad's entire army can go this way.
I
The
can
entire game. There's nothing he can do.
And the thing is I want to work on the things that when you're deploying your terrain, you have to work on the things you can control. I have no idea what TJ is going to put as first if he's doing on his half. I can't control that. I can control this as my plan. I can set up a plan of action to start taking objectives, to start trying to score points, to put in my plan. He might decide, I think I shoot better than you, and you have to come to me, and he's going to do what we were talking before. Turn all of his buildings the other way, make them open, give me no places. I have to assume that he's going to do the worst thing possible for me in terrain deployment, so I have to set up to score my points. The only thing that you can really determine is what you can do, not what can happen from your opponent and reacting. You have to set up a plan. Where am I setting up? Where am I going?
What do my secondaries look like? How are they affecting the game? How are they going to affect my opponent's
and this-
secondaries?
I actually put this here on purpose because this needs to be this. 10, 15 degrees of angle means such a big deal because if I do this, I can get possible angles from him moving 30, pulling out, Tau, whatever, them. Pre-measure. What is the angle?
Because it's still not affecting this, right?
Correct.
Like
Yep.
your opponent's still not going to be able to shoot.
I mean, he can shoot you from off board.
They're not going to be able to get this angle. They would have to here, but as long as you're here, there's nothing that he can do to shoot this way that's going to affect you.
And that's why you measure the angles, you pre-measure everything out, you pre-measure their movement, and you'll watch when I put terrain out, I'm always seeing how far my opponent can go and what is the angle he can shoot me at. And that's why I say V's, not L's, because this is so much worse than this.
Not to mention, like, you can just deploy your terrain. No one's going to get upset with you that you deploy your entire army and go, cool, this piece down. All right, cool. Now this piece down. All right, cool. Now this piece down. All right, lastly,
and they can't
that
do
piece.
anything. He can literally only affect me maximum 6 inches.
Yeah,
So
and if he wants to put terrain on the line, that 90% of the time will help, you rather than help your opponent. Because now it's saying to you that if your opponent's playing the melee army, that's where they're going, right? Now they have to go to that point.
100%.
That's their staging point. The second thing is if you get to it first, they lose the piece of terrain. Now they're like, oh shit.
now it's my piece
Now
of
it's
terrain.
my piece of terrain.
I'm the
it's my
captain
staging.
now.
It's my staging ground. I'm going to get my units where I want to get them. And now, knowing that you can't get there quick enough to get there and be able to make the charge on that unit behind the wall, now they're like, great, I just seceded another point of terrain for me, which further tightens in that angle. It tightens in the noose, as I like to call it. So it's very important. There's a whole bunch of things you can do to really make yourself better. The best thing I can tell you to do for practice-wise is play by yourself. Set up a table.
I'm telling you.
Set up a table, just run it 100 times.
You know, I say this and people look at me like I'm a crazy person. Deploy your army by yourself.
Get in TTS, deploy your army, see what it looks like on the table. A lot of the times when me and Brad build lists, the first thing I do is I want to see what the footprint looks like.
100%.
I want to put the whole army on the table. I can look at Battlescribe lists all day, but I want to know what the army looks
Well,
like.
So many lists feel perfect when you look at them in Battlescribe.
Yep.
I have so much damage. I'm very fast, and then you put them on the board and go, "Oh, I've got a ton of vehicles. I've got a huge footprint.
Yep.
I have a hard time hiding. I know what terrain." And that's another thing. When you know you're going to a tournament, we'll talk about this in tournament prep in just a little bit here. But you have to know what you're going to have. Most tournaments have pictures of the terrain. So you can figure that out in the basement, the game store, TTS. TTS is super easy to find it. Find similar things. Put your army out, put the terrain out, and start figuring out how it fits. Can I make it from here to here? Is this a good spot? Great. If I've got 12 inches of movement, I'm perfect here. However, if I'm only moving 6, well,
now you might do something like this might become this
Yep.
because that can turn a little
exactly,
a little
and
wider
block
for
a little
you.
bit more.
Yeah.
So you really have to start preparing for this. The terrain is such a big deal. What the terrain setup is means a huge, huge difference. Even when we're playing just straight player place terrain, what type of terrain you're going to have.
Well, a good example of that is like when you go to Games Workshop, do you run the same list that when you go to Games Workshop tournament, do you run the same list that you run to
Nope.
frontline gaming events? No, absolutely not. And no one would expect that you would do that either. Everybody who goes to these events knows, hey, there's going to be 4 boxes on the outside of the table. There's going to be 2 ruins in the middle of the table. There's going to be 2 forests in the corner and 2 forests in this corner. Great. Knowing that, I know that normally 90% of the time, 1,000 Suns are not good at Games Workshop terrain. I can't get the angles properly. I can't see units unless they want me to be seen. They have a good staging point in the middle. It's already pre-made for them. So if I want to take T-Suns, I need to add something to my army that's going to be able to deal with that stuff. Maybe it's anti-melee units. Maybe it's trash that runs into the middle of the table and goes, if your staging area is here and here, I'm going to put a unit right here. So yeah, you can get on the other side of that wall, but you're not going to be able to charge the units back there.
Right.
You're only going to be able to charge the units that I give you. So it's very important that you
Sure.
that you
We're gonna
have
go
the stuff
for-
set up.
Do we have any, before we move on with a lot of other things, do we have any questions that have come up so far?
A couple that Matt was actually already answering in chat. So
How dare
Wow.
you? How dare you?
I'm trying. One thing I was curious about is what about in like GW terrain or not player place terrain? How can you take advantage of that? How can you plan for that?
I'm going to plan for that again. Same thing. We'll kind of merge into tournament prep. That's kind of how we came up with the topics for today, because terrain ends up being
Yeah,
Tournament prep.
part of your list construction.
100%. So when I'm looking at, for instance, GW terrain, and what we play right now is mostly player placed, GW, UK, whatever theirs is, the United Kingdoms when we run Coventry, LGT, and stuff like that. All of those are going to be different lists, and you see wildly different lists in
Yeah.
an FLG event, and a GW event, and an England event. And that's because they have different terrain setups. So you're going to have to go, do I have the movement to get from terrain piece to terrain piece?
Can I take advantage of it?
Yes.
Is there units that work better in this particular
Right.
matchup? Like I don't like screamers, but in a Games Workshop terrain, screamers are actually really good. They move very fast. They can get to that middle point, that staging area very quickly, and get to another point and basically threaten any unit for how fast to move. Normally in a normal game, I can set up my terrain where I don't have to worry about something being hidden because of how fast. Flamers are great in that terrain. They can move 12 inches. That's a good footprint. I know where that looks like. But in a Games Workshop terrain, it's preset. I already know what that's going to look like.
Yeah. And it's a big deal on that. I can take advantage of it because I know exactly where they're going to be. So it's important that you measure out what's going. For instance, I'm not going to bring Custodes Dreadnought spam to a GW event because there's way too many places for my opponent to move block me.
Yeah. Same thing with Chaos Knights. Some of your bad matchups now become pretty good matchups.
Yeah, because they don't have places to go. You know where they're going to go. You can start to plan on that. While in player placed, if I'm playing Dreadnoughts, I'm playing Chaos Knights and things of that nature,
Yep.
I'm going to set up wider lanes because I need to make sure that you can't just move block me by because I'm not sticking one base and being able to fit through.
Yeah.
I need to set up areas that I can go. So a unit of 4 jet bikes or something doesn't just shut down the shop. So it's going to be different depending on where I am. I'm going to have more fast moving elements. I'm going to have more, tell you the truth, infantry based armies, especially on GW terrain, because they can also, they're big squares. And if they're not using WTC facts and things of that nature where they can't count as making the charge, if you 1.1 all the way around and you have cavalry, vehicle keyword, things of that nature, that's a big deal.
We got a question for you guys.
What's up?
So from Dante, shooting army versus shooting army. Do you leave the battlefield empty in the middle? Let's just say Talbot Chaos Knights maybe.
Sure. So I mean, it's entirely incumbent on what your, again, when we talk about this, what does your game plan look like? As a Chaos Knight player, what do my secondaries look like? Well, I'm probably going to take Ruthless Tyranny because I need to be in the middle.
I would say you have to take the middle at that point in time because you have to take 3 objectives.
I have to take 3 objectives. I have to hold more. I have to hold 3 or more than my opponent. So I'm
it
going
also
in the
means
middle.
what their melee composition is, though.
Right.
Because those are, when we're saying shooting army versus shooting army, which is Knight's Tau, for instance, 2 tons of volume of shots, but, sorry, Tom, Chaos Knights bang a wee bit harder hand to
Just
hand.
a little bit harder in melee.
I'm okay with blocking off that middle at that point in time because I want a place to hide. And also, when you're looking at, and this is one of the, we didn't say it before, I missed, sorry. When you're setting up, make those angles, we're trying not to get shot. But one of the other things that we're trying to do is if someone gets an angle on you, you need to make sure that the angle's extreme and they have to come to you. You have to punish people for getting those shots on you. What you can't do is set like this,
and then set this like this, and they can go here.
and they can just shoot it
And that's
max.
that's not really a detriment. But if I set
Right.
it here, it's very difficult. My opponent now is in the middle of nowhere, trying to shoot across, get an angle on me.
And I
they
have
can only go to that
Yeah,
right
and I have
angle.
something right here and right here. If somebody gets shots on you, you have to make sure with your terrain placement that wherever they're going to get that shot, you now have an answer to that.
It's going to cost them.
Yeah.
So an example we can do right here. Always make sure your train also works to your advantage.
Tom had to roll him. I like it.
Yeah.
He's just like, hold on.
Oh.
It's mad nice.
So
That only
looking
worked for
from
me.
the Tau perspective, I'm not gonna measure this, but I'm just gonna give an example. So I'm assuming that's their 3 big pieces, our 3 big pieces, and Brad sees me do this all the time, so he's gonna know what I'm talking about here. Make yourself terrain that works for you. So if we look at this, actually probably more like this right here. So let me just angle in here better. If you look at this right here, and this can be measured better, but I'm not trying to play the game. If you just look at this quick little triangle for Tau, I can be in any of these places and block line of shooting. Let's be more like this. Because if I got like 3 or 4 crisis squad back here, you're only gonna get line of sight if you're shooting from here or from here. I can have my crisis squad back here. I can have my crisis squad back here with long strike. The most important thing is no matter where I go from here, I can get angle on anywhere on the board, but I severely cut off their angles. For example, you're never going to get angles in here because to get the angle to get past here, you got to go through this piece of terrain. It's not going to happen. Assuming this has obscuring, by the way. You're not going to get back here unless you're up here because you have to be here.
Well, that is a big thing on this.
Yeah, know what the terrain is.
No,
Very important.
Go to your tournament packet. If you're confused about anything, just send an email to the TO. All the TO's emails are on their tournament packs. Just make sure that you know what something is. This is a big deal. I've seen this happen.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times this is definitely been a thing.
All of a sudden, you think this is obscuring. Your entire game plan runs around this is obscuring, and your opponent's like, yeah, it's not in the pack. And then just murders your army and ruins
Or
your
there's a
tour.
forest, and you're like, clearly this must be dense, and then they go, no, actually it's light cover in this, and you're like, oh, that's really bad because I gave you light cover in the middle of the table. What I thought was I was giving you dense. So,
Yeah. Well, the next part we're going is assuming this is industrial because it's what it's modeled to be. Also, don't just stop for your 3 pieces of terrain that's how you get your angles. Try to use other pieces to your advantage as well. For example, you can put dents here. So if they deep strike in or somehow get back here, now you're going to get a little bit of bonus from there. or if you're confident in how you can position yourself, like I like to put a dents here if possible. So when they're shooting, if they do get the angles, a couple things, they're giving me a -1. And because how it's positioned, I can come out here, shoot, and fade back in, or out here, fade back in. Maybe just if I'm gonna stay out here, you gotta call it a game plan. And like what Brad and TJ said earlier, always practice. Even if you're just deploying by yourself, get used to it. Try to put like 2 crates, 3 pieces on each side that are obscuring, like one really big one, a medium one, smaller one, and some craters or some forest. Practice with it, get used to it. Because when I go to a tournament and the majority of tournaments are on the same terrain, I kind of have a game plan of how I want to do it already. Because it's our memory muscle at that point.
It's such a big deal on that is especially if you can get it on TTS, if you can get a copy of the terrain, you can mimic it at your
Yep.
game store, the basement, whatever. It saves me so much time when I go to tournaments. I'm able to relax and enjoy myself. We'll talk about this in tournament prep in a moment because they all go together, which is I know where I'm going to deploy and I know where I'm going to deploy my terrain before I get to the table.
Yep.
Because I've done it before. And you don't have to spend a million hours. I do because I'm a crazy person. And he also stays up weirdly late. But
I do. I do. I just, I get a lot of reps, and I make sure that I have the reps. So oftentimes when I get to a table, not only am I not stressed out in the beginning of a deployment, I will often tell my opponent, hey, man, I'm going to pull my whole arm back here. Is that cool? And they go, yeah, that's fine. Now
I've made so many people look at me like I was a crazy
Yeah.
person when I go, I'm going to deploy my army. You can just wait.
You-
And then
yeah,
I'm
you
going to
can
go
use
and
whatever
then I'm going to go
information
get
you
some
want off me.
wine. But
Yeah.
it's not going to change, especially if you're playing pointy ears. You're playing most anything that has the ability to be obscured. You're not just deploying stuff on the line to get shot if
Yep.
it can move, especially if it has the breachable keyword or fly.
Yep. So
Don't be seen. The best way to not get killed, don't be seen unless your guard comes out.
yeah.
Screw
So
guard.
the other thing I'll tell you
Screw guard.
with the deployment for Knights against Tau is knowing that the profile of the Chaos Knight, knowing what it is, you can make it. What we often talk about, where you're making these ruins so that you can jump on your shooting phase and then jump back. So yeah, you can leave a huge flank open as long as you have a building that you can do this every turn. You're like, all right, cool. I'm going to leave my building like this so I can hold it on this side, and I'm going to jump here, shoot all of this, which I have left open now, and then I'm going to just jump behind the wall. And now my opponent can't just walk up to this wall, and he's going to have to go around. And if I made another angle here, now that becomes more difficult. I'm trying to make it so my opponent can't
Which
get
is another
through.
one of those things why barricades are such a big deal, because you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you can use your fly keyword and your movement, how you're moving
And
around
then you can
things.
you can put your barricade like this. Now you've made it so that your opponent can fit one model through here that then has to turn here to then come around
Yep.
here to then melee these guys. It's not going to work for them. It's going to take them too long. And then if you put a dense piece of terrain there, you've effectively blocked your entire table. Now, when you look at it from a Tau perspective, what have you really done that hurts you? Nothing.
Nothing.
You have a dense piece of terrain that you get to ignore every turn. A unit gets to ignore every turn. You have a unit back here.
Crisis
that
Commander for life.
yeah, you got a unit back here that basically gets to do it. You move, shoot, move every turn, and the rest of your army's sitting in the back of the table waiting for him to come around. Especially if he's on this deployment zone and you're on that deployment zone, you've basically just told him, like, yeah, you can come through this depth trap if you want, and he's probably got at least one piece of terrain right here. So now we've got some nonsense where he's like, I can come to here, no problem, but then I got to come here, and then I got to spend most of my movement moving from here, and then maybe on turn 3 or 4 I can charge this unit.
Especially go off, again, you're measuring all of your terrain before you put any of your terrain out. So it's such a big deal on that. Also, look for opportunities where your opponent made a mistake. Your opponent's knights, and he put terrain too close. Okay.
Great. Now you can get one night through. Now my job is to make it even more difficult. Like if you did a piece of terrain here and a piece of terrain here, well, on my deployment zone, if I did something like this,
Then he has to go up and
or this
around.
way, I mean, and then if I put another piece of terrain like this now I know with all the firing lanes, I know where he's going to melee. So knowing all this, get a squad of crew hound that sit right here. Now my opponent can go, they go here to here, and then they get stuck here, murder that unit. Now you're like, okay, cool, that unit dies. And then on the same stuff over there, it's very easy. I would say that Tau against Chaos Knights is much easier for you to do on player-based placed terrain than it is
Huge.
for a Chaos Knight player.
For
Chaos
sure.
Knight player has to basically go, I can't really hide too much, and I don't want to hide. I want to get across the table as quickly as humanly possible, and my opponents don't want to do any of that.
And that's what we talked about with game plan. You're looking to set up a game plan. What is your game plan?
Yeah.
And then you put out that terrain. Well, I don't have to kill the knights. I just need to stall the knights as I take my score. Because if he's
Couple for you guys.
hit me,
I'm ready.
First one from Corey says, I'm pretty sure Brad is wearing the same exact sweater that Mr. Rogers was buried in.
I dug him up.
Took his sweater.
Secondly,
Yeah.
This is a Star Wars Barry. Thank you very much.
we got
I look old and I'm a nerd.
Do you guys prefer player placed terrain or preset terrain when you play?
Now, preset terrain, yes is the answer to that.
No,
Is it preset terrain that is Games Workshop terrain, or are we talking preset terrain, just your normal preset terrain? Because that's a big deal.
I actually, I'll give more of them. I like preset terrain that moves per the mission.
Yes.
That is my favorite because one, it's faster. The board's already set. Two, it's way more fair because there's times when if TJ and I are perfectly equal in skill and he plays player placed all the time and I just don't. Maybe I only play GW terrain and stuff like that and we go to a tournament. He has a light year advantage on me because all of a sudden I'm putting out terrain and I go, well, crap.
Yeah.
This game's going to go bad.
I mean, we talked about that before, but like, Brad wins the roll. He's playing Creations of Bile. He puts his crazy fast melee army right here. Cool. I put one of these forests over here because I know what he's going to do now. And then I put this stupid crate here. And now he's like,
cool.
great. I
and then
got this.
And then he move blocks right here and goes, enjoy taking 3 turns to wander aimlessly around the board.
And then you got a ruin like this, something like that. You know, it's difficult when you don't have that experience. So preset terrain is, in my personal opinion, is the best because it puts everyone on the same level playing field. Now,
it's also faster. I mean, that's a big deal because the more time, and this is why I'm going to go into tournament prep, the more time you have to play, the more relaxed you are, the more you're going to win.
Yeah.
Because you're prepared, you're not making the worst way to lose is when you're at the end of the game and you're making rushed moves and you realize all of that was stupid. You played an amazing game for 4 turns and then all of a sudden you went, oh crap, I could have just done this and this. If I could have just taken my time, I easily win that game. And then you're sitting at lunch going, I'm an idiot.
Or you get done. It was very stressful at the end. You're packing up your models, and you realize that you scored something incorrect. Well, if you were already very close to the end of time and you did not finish early, most of the time the judge is going to be like, scores are in.
Scores are in.
Scores are in. You're already breaking
And
for lunch.
I would say we've already paired for the next round. So it's.
I had to hurriedly pack up my models. He had to hurriedly pack up his models. Like,
whoa! I hurriedly packed my stuff.
yeah, sorry. Someone comes around and packs his models up.
That's crazy
But in
talk.
the instance where you finish an hour early, 45 minutes early, maybe you both go and get a drink. Then you realize during the drink that something. Come back to the table.
They've done 2 hours early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple drinks.
Yeah, you just realize, hey, this actually happened the wrong way. When we can fix that, it's an easy fix. Now, I'll tell you what my least favorite terrain set is. That's easy. That's a no-brainer. That's, of course, Games Workshop terrain. In their benevolent wisdom, they have made what I like to call a meta-warping terrain set.
I love that terrain set. Give me all my punchy
Yeah,
armies.
so
You're about to
it's-
get beat up, yo.
So it's just, I want everyone to be able to play what they want to play. A preset terrain gives you a good level playing field on that instance. If he wants to run his crazy melee, that's fine. If I want to run my shooting, that's fine. Games Workshop says, hey, at shooting, you better have some melee attached to that or you're going to have a bad time. So, like, I don't want to have to tailor my army to play in a certain format. Will I do it? Of course. Do I prefer it? Absolutely not. So preset terrain is probably first for me. Player-based terrain is probably next. And then lastly is definitely Games Workshop. Way, way, way at the bottom. But that's just
I would
me.
say it's for me. It's not way at the bottom. It's going to
Well, there's
determine.
only 3 spots, so it has to be way
I mean,
at the bottom.
it's going to be. The thing is it's very big on. I'm going to take wildly different lists depending on the terrain, and as you should though. And that doesn't mean that you have to jump faction or anything else. It just means that you have to be aware of what's going on with that terrain because you'll have a shit time if you get an 8-game tournament and you realize, crap, I just bought my all cavalry vehicle army to Games Workshop terrain. You're just going to be like, welp, sometimes that doesn't work out as well.
Okay. All right. So I guess that's going to bring us into our next segment. We're going to start tournament prep. So if there are no other questions about terrain,
Well, you said we had a couple. There were three. Then you gave us two.
There's a question. What it was is Matthew James said Brad and TJ has changed his mind on barricades.
I'm telling you right now, most underrated thing in the game. I constantly see this go out last, and somebody's just like,
now, one important caveat I will explain about that, and then we don't have to talk about it too much more. So oftentimes you will get a barricade, and you will not talk to your judge, and then they will tell you some nonsense like it's a barricade except I can run
It's
through
breachable,
it.
yeah.
It's breachable. You need to ask and make sure it is a true barricade
Yeah.
in which it is not breachable. Breachable is a big deal. That becomes almost useless at that
That is
point.
completely useless. It is a paper. It is a banner that you run through.
Yeah, I would
college
set it up
football
like
games.
this. At this point, I'd be like, it's not even doing anything anyway, so I might
Yeah.
as well just do something with it.
So it's a big deal.
And
on
we
that.
got one more thing.
Sure.
Corey
Shoot.
Butch says TJ looks like he goes town to town, selling ground up zero bones that cure impetus.
He's basically saying,
I've got
you're-
the miracle pills.
You're a
If you-
snake oil
Yeah,
salesman.
for about $20, I can help you out. I mean,
Look, man, just because your junk's not working and you need some
Yeah, I
some
mean-
ground up zebra powder,
I can come over there and give you the powder. I've got it.
he'll also apply it.
Extra $5, all right?
That's fine. Yeah.
$4.99.
One last question before you switch. So do you think it's important to have a conversation with your opponent before the game? And I agree. This
You're getting into.
So, do me a favor. Repeat his question, Mike, so they can actually hear it.
Sure. So, should you have a conversation with your opponent before the game begins?
literally and blank.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Doesn't
Everything.
matter.
You should talk about everything.
You should talk about everything. I feel that I have 99% great games because of the fact
Yeah.
that I talk to my opponent constantly
do
about
goat
everything.
I do 3-up goat dust. That's what I do. You want that 3-up? You want that 3-up save? I got some goat dust for you.
trying to perform here. So, it's important that you talk to your opponent about literally everything.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to think this is obscuring and it's not. You don't want to think that your opponent can't do something. All of those things. The pre-game questions should go.
You want to know how their list works? I want to know what secondaries you give up accurately. I can't tell you how many times someone's picked a secondary against me and then been like, oh, that's actually really hard to do. Like, that's... I picked it because you said 5 characters, but I wasn't actually
But
listening.
running down, that's why I said ask the question and then blank, is because you have to ask for, do you have redeploys?
Yep.
Do you have heroics? Do you have fights last?
Do you have intercept when I bring my models in? Do you have
Yeah.
any way to screen me out? Do you have a way to shoot me when I come in?
Ask all of these things because
Do you have undeniable psychic powers? Are you going to be taking a psychic's, secondary because you have undeniable powers?
learning all these during the game is not when you want to learn them. Finding out something on turn 3 will definitely make it'll make you feel like you got gotcha, but it's a bad play experience for both people because neither player feels like they got the win or the loss.
It also hurts
legitimately.
you because you're upset at yourself. I'm always upset when I make a mistake, even if I I learn from it. But initially, I'm upset. Like if I don't ask you, hey man, do you have a way to deep strike in closer than 9 inches? Now it doesn't happen often, but that definitely happens. When my opponent drops in, I can't be upset. So
Tom is the slowest writer ever. He's writing something on a board for us.
Yeah, this is enough here now.
okay. All right, cool. Great. So yeah, I mean it's very important that you have these conversations with your opponent. Also explain your intent. Hey man, I want to let you know something before we start the game. I'm very laid back. If you forget something, we can go back and fix it. I want us both to have a good game. I don't want you to lose because you forgot to do banners, even though you ran over or you forgot to do R&D. Or you get people who are like, hey man, I don't want any takebacks. I want to play a nice, very serious, yeah, it's the worst kind of game. But like there are people who I have played who are like, I don't want any takebacks. We're going to play, if you leave something where it is, that's where it's going to be. We're not going to do any of this nonsense where you go back and fix a whole bunch of things. And you're like, sure. Now, I will tell you 9 times out of 10, by the end of that game, we are both going back and fixing things because throughout the course of the game, they realize that it's probably funner to, let your opponent actually have a good time.
I challenge people to look at games and find that no one made any mistakes in an entire game
It's
of
true.
40K.
Yeah, I mean, you move a model in the wrong
There's
way.
just so many there's
Pick a secondary, and then you forgot to do it. Or this happens oftentimes. You're playing the mission. You're playing vital intelligence. You have a unit in the backfield that's doing nothing the entire game. You get to the end of the game, and your opponent goes, cool. So what was the mission? You're like, oh, right. It
should
was
have probably done data intercept.
Yeah,
the
I
entire
probably
time.
should have probably done that. Or scouring for doing the objectives every turn.
Yeah, it's big on that is just being. Don't be a dick. Be a gentleman.
Yeah.
I
So,
mean, that's really what's going on.
I mean, that's going to kick off the beginning of the
if you,
tournament.
and the
prep.
thing is don't. And this is a big thing, and a lot of new people to intent do this. Don't declare things to your opponent. Have a conversation with your opponent. If you're just going, I don't want to be seen, and you put some guys here, and your opponent goes, well, I can clearly move X mount and then C, you have to talk to them. How far can you move? What I'd like to do, and do this, you have the conversation before any models are moved. What I'm trying to do is I'd like to not be seen by your towel. I don't want to be shot by crisis suits.
Yeah.
How can they go? Almost all the time, your opponent will literally help you
Yeah.
win against them.
Yeah,
They-
everybody's here to have fun. This is a hobby game. This is a luxury sport. No one does.
Luxury sport.
Yeah,
I
nobody,
like that.
nobody
Ah,
wants to
I'm
be
fancy.
Yeah, nobody. I mean, we got it. That's what the snake oil is for.
I'm barely
Yeah.
wearing Mr. Rogers
Yeah,
sweater.
yeah.
though.
So, but I mean, like, no one's forced to be here. So, like, we both want to have a good time. I want you to have a good time. We're here together for 3 hours. Like, we should probably both enjoy stuff. So, if I tell my opponent nothing and he asks no questions, and then we get to the secondary phase and he goes, hey, I'm going to take mental interrogation. What do you think? With my T-Sons, I think you're going to score a 0. But if I don't say anything, the first time he flies up, he goes to cast a spell on me, psychic interrogation. And I go, all right, 3d6 deny. Cool, drop a die. No,
That's just 3d6.
there's
tonight.
3d6 deny. And they go, wow, I wish I would have had that conversation with you beforehand. So it is on me and on you to ask questions. And if you don't ask a question, don't take this as I don't have to explain anything because you didn't ask anything. No, I'm going to explain shit to you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, I just want to let you know if you pick psychic interrogation, this happens all the time with me. People will take secondaries, and then we'll talk about those secondaries, and then those secondaries will change. Hey, man, I want to take R&D. Hey, just so you know, my Thousand Sons have a strat where I can intercept you when you come in. So if I'm in this corner of the map, it's an 18-inch
I was just going
intercept.
to say, also, why is it an extra 6 inches?
I don't know, but it just is, right? So I explain that to them. They go, all of a sudden, they go, oh, R&D is probably not a good idea. I'm like, yeah, that's probably good. I'm going to take psychic interrogation. Cool. 1 CP, I get a 3d6 deny, and my warlord trait allows me to re-roll it. Okay, I'm not going to take that. That's probably not a thing.
And it's a big deal on that. And during the course of the game, constantly, again, conversations with your opponent, not just statements. Hey, DJ, I'm going to try to charge here. I'd like to try to stay out of heroic intervention.
Yep.
Again, I know we talked about it. Do you have a way to go more than 3?
Yep. You have any weird strats? Do I need to know about? You
Just
know,
ask them, and again, before you move the models. The worst thing is when someone tries to adjust everything
Yeah,
after
so-
everything happened. That's cool for the basement, not as cool for the tournament.
you got a unit over here, and I go to you. Okay, so if I'm here, I can clearly see that model, right? And you go, yeah, unfortunately. Now, a weird conversation, if I just did it and shot you, you're upset now because you fucked up. Your intent was for me not to be able to see it. But if I have that conversation, I go, hey, man, just so you know, I can see it here. You go, hey, they were trying to be hidden. Is it okay if I just move that one guy? Yeah, dude, that's fine. That was what you were trying to do.
But have that before.
But if you have that
have them
conversation
help you
before I
before
move the
you
model,
move.
before I explain what I'm doing, now we're
But
all on the
thing
same
is,
page.
that's why you move. You measure in your movement phase. You measure your opponent's movement phase and see where they can go, and then you both agree what they can see, what they can charge. It's very nice for charges too. No arguments.
Yeah,
because I go,
that's the
okay,
best.
you're behind here. You want to charge here. Your unit moves 6. Oh, it looks like if you move 6, you're at an 11-inch charge. We both agree? Cool. So it doesn't matter because models get hit. They get knocked over. Dice hit them. The table gets bumped. that guy with a tray of shots bumps all your models over. Now you're pissed. My bad. So,
Yeah,
you
so
know-
I mean, the important thing to note is at the beginning of your turn, you should at least explain what you're trying to do. You know, like, hey, I want to try to charge this unit. I'm measuring. I am 18 inches away from you. They move 6 inches. That's an 11-inch charge.
That's a big thing too, because most people will be very accommodating if you say what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You're like, this. I'm going here to here. I'm going to try to shoot this, and then when you start moving, go. I'm going to charge this. I'm going to charge this. These guys are going to charge right here. And then if you move, or maybe one's out of line of sight, or maybe you have really short arms and you can't reach,
Yep.
and you need your opponent to move those guys over. So remind me, you know.
I
like-
mean, Tom does it a lot too. You bring a unit in, and you're like, all right, I want to charge this unit. And Tom goes, hey, man, just so you know, I have a strat. Makes you -2 your charge. Well, now that 9-inch charge from Deep Strike is now an 11-inch charge. That's probably something I'm not going to try.
Or your jump command.
Watch first, too.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
your jump commander goes, I just leave.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, things like that are something that are weird interactions.
Can you make a 17-inch charge even if
Yeah.
you're 1 inch away?
So
No,
there's a
probably
lot
not.
of that kind of stuff where you got to explain to your opponent what's going on, and that will make it much easier for your opponent before he tries to do something. You know, because the worst thing you can do is you can have your opponent set up their models, want to do something really cool. They get super excited. They're about to turn the tide of the game, and then you explain something to them after they've already put their models down and try to do something that is just now not going to happen. Eldar, I put a unit down. Cool. I am super far away. Cool. So my Farseer is going to allow these guys to shoot at you, and I'm going to kill that entire unit that you were expecting to charge something.
Yeah.
Oh,
It-
okay.
And no one wants to win like that because it just makes everybody feel bad about it. So it is a big thing on that.
Yeah.
So
A couple things I want to add in real quick with you guys, if you don't mind me. We only have.
nope,
two
we want
mics,
none. We want none.
There we go.
real close.
If someone's distracting you and another guy comes in and just this is like
I hate when that happens.
It's the worst.
You
It's the
really
worst.
can't do much on it. You just gotta kind of accept it for getting caught doing that.
You only do it on stream games also. You just watch somebody turn all the
Don't
dice.
mind me as I cuddle Brad. We only got 2 mics here right now because well, me and Brad's horrible at planning things out. We found out today.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm excellent at planning.
But no, a couple things I want to bring in for tournament prep. So, like Brad said earlier, player placed. Make sure you guys play a lot of reps, right? Even if you're playing with your friends, goof off games. Being able to know how your army plays is a very big deal. It helps with mental fatigue, which is a serious thing when you're playing 6 and 9 rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got if you're doing a 6-rounder, that's 6-12. It's 18 hours of pretty intense mental thinking if you're playing some pretty good games there. It's fun, but it's still intense. Sportsmanship, huge. Brad and I talked about it. I want to hit it again. Like, having a talk before the game, make sure everyone understands each other. When you're going to interact, like Brad said, we have a tape measure. Don't just sit there and be like, for one, okay, he moved, and then be like, oh man, I thought that would have been like more like a 6-inch charge. Now it's like a 4. I think you moved too much. For one, you protect yourselves, but 2, you protect the integrity of the game by everyone having fun. So okay, you're intent to charge these guys. So let's see here. Right now you're just over 18 inches away, so you move 6 inches. Man, that's like a 12-inch charge, right? I don't know if that's possible. Or you're 12 inches away, you move 6. That's a 6-inch charge. Make sure everything's like clear and open, precise. But the most important thing, and I want to make sure we get it again, is always ask questions in the beginning. It helps you have a better game. Like, I have a list of questions, Brad has a list of questions, I know TJ has a list of questions.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, things I always ask. Hey, do you have any redeploys? Do you have any movement shenanigans? Do you have any way to interact outside of the phases? Like, so many questions you want to ask. That's particular. When I play Tau, the first thing I ask, can you redeploy in the deployment phase? Nope. Can you pregame move? Do you have ways of getting first turn charges? Do you have ways to bring things out of deep strike turn 1? Do you have things that can interact when I deep strike? Like, those type of questions are extremely important.
Yeah. Can charge my OBSEC.
Yep.
Does your entire army have OBSEC? Does your
Does it
entire army
they
pre-game move
move?
plus OBSEC?
So many things, but the thing is, like, some questions are more
That
important
army's
to your
good.
style.
Yeah, that
Like,
sounds
for
great.
me, like, when I ask questions, I never ask OPSEC, because with my Tau ideology, I'm just going to shoot you. Like, you can't hold objective, you're dead.
Your ideology is everybody's killed.
Yeah.
It won't
Hit
matter.
it with a bat until it's down.
I'm gonna take I'll just take banners because I can put 5 up the last 2 turns, and because my opponent has no models.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very important. So I think that's probably, if we're talking about tournament prep,
Well,
it's
let's
probably the
start.
most important tournament prep thing I can tell
Well,
you.
let's go. Let's start with the easiest things on now, which is when you're getting ready, tournament prepping for a tournament is the terrain. The first thing is
Yep.
the terrain.
Yeah.
So because you're going to build an army that's going to be different based on
Yeah, it's going to do well in a particular terrain. You know, back when Nova was a thing, those are Nova Ls. That was very important for you.
wildly
Yeah,
different.
you had to
armies.
have something that did stuff. Maybe you're playing some weird tournament that has actions where you have to do actions. Well, now I'm going to have a unit that's going to be able to do those actions in the backfield. You know,
You guys remember how wild Nova Owls were back then?
yeah. Well, I was just talking about Nova
especially
right
on the
there,
stream,
too.
especially on the stream table. 'Cause
Engineers.
They
That's
were
what it
also
was.
that big.
Yeah, and engineering.
Nova L is legitimately an L, but it was a
13,
12 by 10
12 by 10, but it was also like 13 inches tall, or some
and it was
nonsense.
solid.
So it could block. It was thick too, so you couldn't just charge up to the wall or anything like that.
Yeah, you had to be able to go through it.
Yeah. You also need to understand when you're talking about tournament terrain is what's their rule in regards to terrain. Some people say if I run up to the building, I can. Some people go no unchargeable units, and that's very important because Brad playing pointy ears,
God.
if he puts a unit 0.9 inches away from the building, well, his intention is to not be charged. If he gets to the first round and his opponent goes, all right, so I'm going to charge, and be like, yeah, so I've made it so you have to go all the way around, and your opponent's like, nah, they're not doing that on this mission. You go, or this tournament, you're like,
Well, that seems bad.
that
now.
seems bad for me. Yeah.
So, the thing is that the more preparation you do before a tournament, the easier the tournament's actually going to be.
yeah.
Now, one of the things is know what your terrain is. Second thing is and I'm very bad about this a lot of times, know what the FAQ is going to be for that tournament.
Know what the missions are going to be if it's available.
Yep.
Do you have a tournament packet? Do you know which 5 missions you're playing? Well, maybe your army should reflect
Those
better
missions, yeah.
for the last 2 missions. You're saying to yourself, Brad goes, you know what? My first 3 opponents, I think I can skillfully beat them with my army, skill to skill. But maybe mission 4 and mission 5, I'm going to be playing, Ogden, Lenin, Harpster. These are armies, these might be difficult armies, plus the player skill. I'm going to need to make sure that my army favors these missions in one way or the other. Maybe it's fast-moving units because we're playing Vital as one of the last missions. Data Scry, sorry. Playing Data Scry, I want to make sure I can get to that point first. Maybe we're playing Scouring. Now I need very strong units that are going to be able to sit on my 2 backfield objectives, which do not have terrain. They're just exposed. So I need to know what the mission is if it's available.
So that's huge. Terrain's basically number 1. The mission's number 2. Now your army list, weirdly enough, comes in a third place. I guess it's part of all of those, but
Yeah.
there's a couple things you have to do when you're looking at the army. Look at the top things that have won lately. Look at what's win percentage, but also look at what is played the most. You're not going to a tournament and probably just blowing through and not playing any Tyranids. You're going to play against some sort of knight. If you're playing 8 games, you're going to play a variety of these. Look at the play rate, not just the win rate, but who's playing things.
Saturation of factions is important.
Yeah.
We call things gatekeeper lists for a reason. Gatekeeper meaning that to win a tournament, the gates are closed
Yeah,
if you cannot beat one of these armies.
So-
Imperial Knights is a big deal. If I don't have a way for anti-tank, if I'm just going to play, I don't know, Harlequins, no fusion pistols, and I'm just going to try to run around the table because I want to save points and I want to take more infantry,
Well,
I better have an amazing strategy for how I'm going to beat
so
these
many
armies.
so many backflips. So many
Yeah.
backflips.
All the 4+.
But it's a big deal on that is you have to look at what armies are popular and available out there to people. So I'm not going to worry as much about there being 100 people with Votan in the next 2 weeks tournaments that I'm going to go to because there's probably just not a lot of them out there. I will be aware of it, but I'm not teching for it or anything. It just doesn't exist in a mass. Now, Tao's going to be there. Tyranids are going to be there.
Demons are going to be
Demon's
there.
going to be there.
I need a way to beat all these armies.
And go down. And the thing is that you have to have a plan. You don't have to have a great plan. You don't have to have I crush this army, but you have to have what is my win condition for each of these? And that includes when you put your army together. You have to have enough damage where if my opponent just derps in front of me, can I do something about this?
Yeah.
The answer has to be yes. The other answer is, and this is one I see people do actually more often than just not having enough damage, is if you're planning on doing actions, if I'm looking at the missions and I have to data scry, I have to drop bombs, I'm playing mission 13, I'm playing mission 12, don't have that one unit of infiltrators who now has a list of things that he has to do. Which
He's got a
include-
to-do list. when
yeah,
he
he's
starts
got
the
a
game.
he's got a data scry return. He's got to drop a bomb. He's got to he's got to screen out.
Yep.
You know, you're like, they can do one thing a turn.
Or, you know, if the tournament is a tournament that has multiple or all of the hole 2 score 5, hole 3 score, score 10. If you have multiple games like that, well, my 20 Terminator list is not that good because that could be 4 more squads of infantry that could then do more objective holding. So it is important to note at least what your mission is going to look
and,
like.
and have at least for the top armies. You can't do it for everything if you don't have time. If you have job kids, real life, that sounds terrible. Just focus more on 40K.
Definitely
But
true.
when you're not doing that, the big thing is that at least have a plan for the top armies. And that plan does not have to be kill everything in the universe. Sometimes it's just score. You don't get a sticker. I think Tom might get a sticker. He gets a sticker every
definitely
time
does.
he gets a
He gets a
scratch
free
stick.
pizza if he gets 10 of
Yeah.
them. Yeah, that's good.
So, but the thing is that at the end of the day, if your opponent killed all your models and you scored more points, cool.
Yeah, like
That's all you need to do.
I mean, like, I love Thousand Sons. Currently, that is my army. But if you said to me, "Hey, there's a lot of sisters. Sisters are heavily taken." Well, I have to have a game plan. Is it going to be a good one? No. But is it something like hide? I'm going to take these secondaries. That's going to force my opponent to come after me, and I can kind of play behind a wall and just hang out. Yeah, that's a game plan. Is it going to work? No. Maybe. Depends how the game goes. But at least I have a way
Yeah,
to
you have to have a way to win.
approach the actual matchup other than like, didn't think anyone was going to play Sisters this weekend. That's really bad.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to give you a bunch of basic stuff that people don't do. And even though it sounds basic, I constantly see it
All right.
ruined all the time.
Is
One,
it bring a tape measure, even though I had to hand you a tape measure before we started today?
but what I do have, I immediately broke it,
Yeah,
and I was
fixed
mad about it.
I fixed it.
Bring things to mark your abilities, your psychics,
Yeah.
your command phase.
I don't know how people do it. I honestly don't know how people do it.
I-
I have seen multiple Thousand Suns players, and I'll get to a table, and they'll just be like, that guy is +1 to hit, 4 up invul, and I'm like, no.
You have to mark. It's for you and your opponent, because nothing's more annoying than I'll go to old AdMac and charging a big unit of Rangers or Vanguard. And they're like, actually, that's the unit that's
Yeah, that
ignoring
red
AP
ship.
1 and 2.
Yeah, that red ship is ignore -1
Yeah.
and 2, but I didn't write anything on there.
which is why
I have a question for you guys.
Sure. Shoot.
I'm like mid this. Tom's like, yeah,
No.
screw Brad.
Is there any army currently in the game that is stronger than Thousand Suns, 3-up Invul, and Zangars?
Ooh,
AKA the Goat Army.
that's tough.
I plead the fifth, and I'm moving on.
yeah.
So, I have dry erase cards that I bring myself.
Yep.
And what I used to do is the ghettoest thing ever for myself, but especially my Dark Eldar, because they didn't have cards for drugs. So I would literally,
No, Brad, you don't tell people you do drugs.
That's-
That's just-
whatever.
We don't talk about that.
I go
part.
I go faster.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But you put things to mark your opponents. I don't care if it's pieces of paper ripped down. It's going to be, you don't want gotcha feel games
Yeah.
that your opponent doesn't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. There's so many rules right now that your opponent can put on the board, like command phase abilities, buffs, psychics,
Yep.
everything else. You need to know where those are, and your opponent needs to know where yours are. You're an asshole if they have no idea where your stuff is.
Like gaming visuals. You want to try to make this as the game is confusing on its own. There's a lot of secondaries that are, there are a lot of stratagems that are difficult to do, a lot of different psychic powers that happen throughout the game. Nothing's more frustrating than you playing against an Eldar player who has 5 different psychers. You kill one, and they're like, all right, cool, so I'm going to cast
I
this and this.
follow them around with the
And I'm like,
cards.
what? So for
Yeah.
me, I play Thousand Suns. It's probably one of the more technical armies. I have a smite counter. I have 2 dice that go literally in the middle of the table where I'm in the psyche phase. We know exactly what it's going to cost for me to smite. I've got a set of cards with everyone's name on it, so they know exactly who has what spell, who's casting what. I have that. I have Cabal tokens, so I know how much Cabal I have, how much I've spent, how much is left, all of that stuff. And then like I said, all the spells have cards. So when I cast spells, the spell goes down on the table. If it's not cast, it's not on the table. So we can't come to a game later on and go, oh shit, I don't see a 4-up. Where is that 4-up? You're like, the card is right here on that unit.
Especially if you're newer to an army or to the game.
It's not going to hurt. It never hurts.
Well, the big thing on that is don't be afraid to have things like cheat sheets. Man, I write stuff on score sheets everywhere, especially if I'm playing a newer army, because I've been known to bounce around armies.
Yeah.
But I'll write down command phase. I had one at one. I can't even remember what the tournament was, but I just wrote on the back of my hand command phase buffs, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do command phase.
I mean,
buffs now.
it's super important. I mean, there are a lot of abilities going around. So for me to remember my own abilities is sometimes very difficult. So then couple that on top of my opponent's abilities that I'm going to see once and then I'm going to forget about it. I need to know what's going on.
And the thing is with that goes back into tournament prep. Know your army. One, if you have a set of cards, 80% of that deck is complete trash.
Yep. Take out the cards you're not going to use.
Exactly. Take out the ones that you're going to use. And a lot of times I'll have two stacks. The ones that I'm using all the time, almost every turn. And then I have the ones that are situational, but I do occasionally use them. Have them out. Also, if you have the space, just put them out in front of you because they're probably going to use 6 or 7 top strats. Literally just roll those in front of you so that they're in front of you that remind you, oh, yeah, I can do this, I can do this.
And that's, honestly, the next thing I'll say is, I know this is really lame. It's a very lame thing to say. Bring your codex with you. Bring the chapter approved book with you. I know it's not cool to be carrying around a codex, but I can't tell you how many times.
I'm an old man. I always have a book with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've had to get out. Someone tells me that that's not how something works. I'll get the book out. We'll look it right up. It's right here. There you go. This is exactly how it works.
2 things from Luke McCarthy.
Yeah.
Gotta love Brad Smooth dulcet tones.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Even smoother apparel.
Wow, okay. Luke, it's not going to help you the next time we play, man. I'm still going to give you the dirty.
Yeah, and then he comes back.
I'm
and
using
says,
my 18-inch Ragnar abilities.
Yeah.
TJ's cards even have awesome design.
That is true.
They do. They do have really nice designs.
But the thing is the more you prep for, the more you know about your army.
Speeds it up.
It
Speeds
it up. And
gives you more confidence. You're not stressed out while you're playing other people.
We talked about this before, and I'm going to go into this as far as prep because we just talked about knowing your army, talking about being prepared with cards, codexes, everything else.
Oh, one other thing before you get into this other thing. Dice. Multiple dice. Do not bring one colored dice to the table and be like, this is my wound counter / dice rolling for the whole tournament / psychic power rolling / stratagem / ability stuff. I have blue dice for just my smite counter. I have a dice when a caster casts a spell, so you know that I'm done casting that character. I have wound dice. You need to have at least 2 different sets of dice.
Yeah.
The very least. Also, one other thing, and then you can go. Tell your opponent at the beginning of the tournament, tell your opponent at the beginning of the game, do you count up? Do you count down? Do you count up? Do you count down?
You do not. ITT says
Sure.
you must count down.
You just
Quit
have to
being
have
a
a
communist
you just
and
have to-
count your wounds down.
You just have
no
to have a
one
conversation.
cares how many wounds you've taken. They want to know how many wounds you
Yeah,
have
but it's
left.
important just to have that conversation
Ah,
because there are
stop
definitely
it.
people who do
You're
it the
a
other
bad
way.
person if you're doing it the other way.
Yeah, there are definitely people. Just to you guys have the same conversation.
You
Even
were-
that conversation there,
You were
where
getting
you tell your
coal
opponent, "Hey
in your
man,
stocking.
ITC sounds countdown." You're like, "Okay, cool, I'll do that, no problem." But that stuff is very important. Anyway,
So, prep. You're gonna have more fun. You can drink more wine, which is always the best thing. But the thing is that get your army ready, get your cards and everything else. Get whatever you're gonna use. I don't care if you just write them on paper. You know what I mean? But have something to do.
something.
Have, like you said, your dice and things of that nature. Know your army. Don't be afraid to look things back up immediately, which is why it's important to have the book. Even if I'm very sure that something's some way,
I have
I'll
a
look it up.
rule. When my opponent asks me a question,
look it up.
I say what it is. If my opponent asks me that question again or says something like, really, the book comes out
100%.
immediately. I do not want you to have some problem when you're going home later on and be like,
Also,
I
just
don't think it
if-
worked
if
like that.
If a question's asked, even if you're 100% on it, just pull
yeah,
out
just
the
pull
book,
it out.
man.
I pull it out. If someone says,
Why not?
first question, hey man, I have an 18-inch intercept. Really? Yep, cool.
get
Grab
it.
it out. Here's the
Here's-
book.
here's the
this
card,
is the
whatever.
strat. This is what it's called. This is how much CP it costs. And then now your opponent's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I understand now. That's dumb that it has that ability. You're like, yes, it literally makes no sense, but you've asked me the question / said a comment to me more than once. I want you to feel at ease while we're playing. It's part of that social contract. I'm going to pull the book out. I'm going to let you know. That's why it's important you have the book. I don't want to hand you my fucking phone with some stupid battle
It's also
scribe.
having all that stuff. Again, it helps with mental fatigue. You have it. You're going to get tired. You might start to doubt yourself on any particular rule. Just have it right in front of you.
Yeah.
So that you're always good. The other thing, again, we talked about it before. Deploy your army before you get to the tournament. I can't tell you how much time that saves if you know where your terrain's going to go, if you know where your models are going to go.
Also, very important. Now, I hear the pros don't do it like this, but I certainly do. The night before, I look and make sure that my army, all the models are there. I have included everything. Yeah. So, but the pros, how the pros do it is they just open a box the day of the tournament.
FedEx box the day of the morning of the
Yeah.
tournament.
But that's important, right? How many times you got into an event and realized that you're missing a character? How many times you got into an event and realized that you're missing, you're missing, you're missing a cultist, you're missing a squad or something because you changed your list at the last minute and the last tournament you didn't have that, right? Like it's important to know what,
Now you know.
yeah.
Alrighty.
Knowing is half the battle.
Alrighty, guys. This brings us to the end of our class. A couple things I want to hit out real quick. First off, we want to thank Dom and Fabricator Forge for hosting us today.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't noticed, this guy has like 20, 30 tables. All his tables are set up this way. Not just a special training he pulls out for the stream table today. It's all his table.
Yeah, I pulled this
Fantastic.
literally from upstairs. They all look
Yeah.
the same.
He has a store that has a kitchen in it with a bunch of snacks and foods and things like pizza rolls and stuff, which is awesome. Never seen that before. Fantastic selection of product. Love it.
He goes right to the food, baby.
Oh, yeah.
The pizza
Not
Pizza
pool. He
rolls.
said he got a free
Pizza rolls.
coupon for pizza, so.
All right, let's keep on track, though.
5-star rating.
Yeah, pizza rolls. We are going to we have a full day for you guys. For those who know, we do have a Patreon. Our goal is to keep the Patreon's costs as low as possible. We know the hobby's already expensive. Our Patreon's different than most people do coachings. You have direct access to like probably I think there's 4 of us are on top 15 in ITC right now. A lot of us in the high and also things like CRS. So direct access, we're very active in there. We chat a lot with the people. Overwhelming response from all our patrons. I think we had a guy you can go in the channel and see. Mentioned last night that he's his win percentage is going up drastically since hanging out with us.
We got 2.
With us.
We got 2 in there. We got one this
Yeah.
morning, too.
Yeah,
I
one
mean,
small. I didn't see that one. And we also do a free monthly master class every single month. The patrons get to vote on what we go over. This month, Demons was actually picked. That's why when we
So much for crew mercenaries.
Crew Mercenaries.
yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't make it.
One reason why we drove way out to Pittsburgh, for you guys don't know, for me and Brad, it's a 4-hour drive. Is because we want to be with this man right here. He's gonna do we're gonna do a Demon Master class in person
Wow.
with Brad and TJ. So we're gonna have that going at 2:30. So we got about
Matt's no longer letting us stay
Yeah.
at his house.
Uh, yeah. Yeah. So 45 minutes until that class starts. We gotta give these guys a chance to get some lunch and stuff. And then after we're done with that master class is available into our patrons. But about an hour after that, you'll see us go live again on the channel. You're gonna see 4 of us here. You got Matt with us as well, part of the DOG crew. We're gonna actually be theory crafting our list today, practicing in person. Doing it live, you guys can ask us questions. You can watch what we go through in our practice. And actually, this is the first step of us prepping for LVO.
Yeah.
So a lot of us getting our list ready and going to LVO, so you can see what we are planning on bringing.
Yeah, we might even have a game. Depending on the time, we might even
We're
stream
definitely
a
gonna have
game.
a game today. 100% gonna have a game
Not
today.
me, though. Yeah, somebody.
So we're gonna have a couple games today, actually. So some good stuff.
4 TD games in a row.
For those in Patrons, we'll see you guys in about 45 minutes for the master class. It'll be posted in the Patreon channel.
Yeah.
It's off Pornhub.com.
Yeah.
No, the link to sign up for Patreon.
Oh, the Patreon sign up is actually in our Discord. You can go on our Facebook and get onto you can look at Death or Glory community on the Facebook, or you can just join our Discord. It's posted in a lot of places. And then you can, and also on Patreon, we have patrons.com/Death or Glory as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of us ran through Discord, so make sure you're in our Discord as well. And then, yeah. Oh, also, TJ's Patreon's actually merging with ours next month, right?
Yeah.
So you'll start seeing us bring even more content. You'll see me and
Yeah.
TJ in there twice a week with going over videos and stuff, and more people probably getting Brad as much as we can. But man's busy. But a lot of good things going on there.
This week is starting the new wine.
Oh yes. So we have our Monday show, if everyone knows, where we talk about the current state of our meta, what we do, what we think about it, what we're going forward for that week. But also on the Thursday is the come hang out with us while we drink wine and smoke weed and don't do anything. Channel
We're
where
very
just-
liberal here, okay?
Yeah.
We're very liberal here, Dom.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah, we well, it's liberal. It's legal in Michigan. That's where I live. Weed is
Yeah,
legal
just
there.
disclosure. We're
Yeah.
not offering you guys to smoke or drink while on the stream with us, but
We
will.
are heavily encouraging it though.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
I
If
live
you're
in
legal, you
Michigan.
know, if you're able to actually do it,
Yes.
please.
Sure, wine's available everywhere.
100%.
Sure.
But come hang out with us, and then, like I said,
We're just gonna talk about stuff.
just it's random, nonsense,
I'm telling you
interactive.
telling everybody, you know that half the community's into the same things of
Yep.
random sci-fi, fantasy, nerd stuff. We're gonna talk about movies, books, 40K. Who cares? And whatever pops into my little head, I refuse to be.
Oh, God, thanks.
Corral.
Someone said little.
Yes.
Someone said little, so that's
Yeah.
great.
All right, like I said, though, in 45 minutes, we'll see you guys in our Patreon class. For those around here, that's part of the Patreon for the master class. And then about an hour after that, so an hour and 45 from now, you'll see us start to go live publicly again, and that'll be for our practice.
All right, guys. See you. Thanks so much.